again, I'm like an idiot. I didn't know what I was doing. And all of a sudden ESPN wants to put this on their network on ESPN2, right? And I'm like, it's very surreal. I'm like a bunch of chuckleheads, me and my friends have made an event, and now it's going to be on TV. This is cool, right? So,
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Obstacle Racing Media YouTube channel. And today we have a chapter in the book of OCR, the OCRWC, aka the OCR World Championships. And this is a call long in coming. I'm really upset now that I think about it that I haven't put all the OCR books on video, because I usually obviously talk to the people through here and could have shown it, but I didn't, and they're all gone now. Oh well, but we're going to bring you this one. But I want to remind you, if you're new here, do a quick screen share and look at the books of OCR. This has been a long time coming, a thing I'd thought about. Yep, I sure did thought about it. Book of OCR Chapter 1. I started this in December of 22, so we're a year and a half into this project that kind of doesn't have an end date. So Chapter 1, Alex Patterson, one of the very first Tough Mudder employees. Chapter 2, Amelia Boone, the dawn of Spartan racing as a professional sport, like the first 2011 to 14, 15-ish. Then another early Spartan days behind the scenes with this woman, Carrie, who used to work at Spartan. Chapter 4, Superhero Scramble and Atlas Race. Two fun races. They brought money. They brought something new. And they both ended going broke. Bracken came on for that one. Then Battle Frog, come on. Had to have a whole chapter about Battle Frog. Brought on David Moore, who used to work there. Chapter 6, I brought on Jack Bauer to talk about, could you believe Tough Mudder gave away a ton of money? They had Tougher, they had Toughest, they had TMX. That was a fun chapter. Chapter 7, Rise of the Groups. This was Paul Jones from New England Spartans. It was a lot of fun. Chapter 8, OCR and TV. The one and only Hunter McIntyre, the sheriff himself, came on. We talked about all the different shows he was on. Then I decided to do this fun thing called the preface. This was with Elizabeth, who worked for me. If you listen to this show, one of the many inside jokes was, do you know I used to own a staffing company? And the reason that became an inside joke was because for the longest time I never mentioned it. I just didn't talk about it. It was just like this weird other life I had. And so then it kind of became this point of reference of, hey, did you know I used to own a staffing company, my last business before this crazy thing? And she and I talk about that. So you get to know kind of who I was kind of leading up to before I started the podcast. And then just recently, July 2nd, the Book of OCR final chapter. Why are we still here? Mike Stefano and I from Obstacle Riding Adventures, we talked about our history together, our history in the sport, and why the heck are we even still here? Should we keep going? I think the answer is yes. But I think even when I recorded that, I told you guys that's probably not the last chapter. I'll probably find other stuff to talk about. And sure enough, I called Adrian and said, let's do this, buddy. Let's go back to 2014. Let's cover it. And we could have spent easily an hour on just years 1 and 2, just looking up those videos and those old pictures. I had some really sweet sense memories. I cried some. Just thinking about it, I might cry now. But let's get into this. I'm really glad I could bring this to you on video as well. If you're listening to this in the podcast, great. But welcome to the YouTube for those that are doing it. I'm not going to record 2 intros. What do you think I am? Crazy? Do you think I have unlimited time and effort? It's just me, just a humble man in my home. So you will really enjoy this. I do think there will be a part 2. I think what we're going to do is open it up to you guys. Listen to this episode and then start DMing me. What questions do you have for Adrian or me about the history of the OCR World Championships? But we covered pretty much everything. Early days, COVID year, everything. So please do enjoy this. Walk down memory lane. And just personally, I want to say, yesterday was a really rough day for me. Yesterday, there was tragedy at the CrossFit Games, and I spent a whole day kind of covering that and kind of doing the journalist thing. And it took over my life and my brain and my emotions, and that bleeds into my wife and my house. And I just wanted to come back to a warm place today. the warm bosom of OCR. And I didn't know that until I had this call. We had already had this call planned. But then when I hopped on it this morning, I was like, this is exactly what I needed. So once again, OCR, you've been there for me. So away we go. This is an episode long coming. I've done these Book of OCR episodes, and doing one on this race, the Obstacle Course Racing World Championships, I've been thinking about for a long time. And I just quickly brought up just a couple of memories. I might start crying a lot. I don't know, Adrian, but here's where I'm going to start. Where I'm going to start is what I wrote about this event, October 27th, 2014. Okay. Which was, I guess, a couple days after the first event.
Yeah. That was like 3 days after, I think.
So I'm going to read this. The title, I got to pull this up. It's so fucking good. Not that I'm so great, but that it just looks good to see all these years later. OCR World Championships review, the real OCR World Championship. And there's this picture that I remember taking. This is the first picture I took, or one of the first pictures I took. This is the morning of the race. The medals look dope as shit. This is a pretty cinematic photo, Adrian. I got to be honest.
That was morning before Saturday.
Right, first day.
Yeah.
It says the Obstacle Racing World Championships held at the Mud, Guts, and Glory course in Oregonia, Ohio, was the 71st obstacle race I have completed. It was the greatest obstacle racing experience I have had to date, period. So right out of the gate, okay, I said this was the best thing I'd ever done. So it goes on to talk about a lot of things in the race, and looks like I tagged a lot of things here, but here's what I wrote. Mm-hmm. In future years, I can see OCRWC becoming the once-a-year event that everyone in the industry wants to be a part of. Everyone I spoke with this past weekend said it was the best race they have ever done. Days later, many can still not stop raving about their experiences on Facebook. One person suggested to me that it has all the makings of becoming a 3 to 4 day OCR festival. It seems a very logical next step. Races could participate in a variety of ways, including but not limiting to becoming a qualifier, building and or donating obstacles to a race, as ABF and Battle Frog did this time around, and or having a tent display in the festival area. In addition, any vendor that is or wants to be part of the OCR space could get their own tents and or sponsor obstacles throughout the race. Yet another way to expand this event would be for OCRWC to offer a shorter sprint course on one of the days to add another level of competition. So just what is all that? What do you think when you hear all of that from now almost 10 years ago?
Oh man, I don't know. I guess pretty proud, right? Like pretty proud. I definitely, especially this year, I've been going back and reading some of those things. Right? I read that. Read a Facebook post from James Appleton, which is a name I haven't heard in a while. Saw a Facebook post from Solo, and it's emotional. It's kind of sad because I'm not, it was something that started 10 years ago, and I don't know, just flattering, I guess. But yeah, emotional, like the full gamut of emotion.
Dude, I'm already crying. I did not plan on this happening. I just want you guys to know. Man, this is supposed to be a history of the whole thing, but I feel like we might spend this whole time talking about years 1 and 2, and then we come back and do it again. I don't know. I really don't know where this is going to go.
Well, I think it's like, yeah, it's the man, you're getting me all worked up. So, it's like those for a lot of us in the community, right? Those years were like the, like formative for the sport, formative for us as like industry professionals, right? The community was just kind of rallying around and like learning what obstacle course racing was. It was a those first 2 years were it was just special, right? It was like almost like a lightning in a bottle type moment. But and I'm proud of the team for being able to pull together. I'm like still dumbfounded that anybody showed up to begin with, right? Let alone flew across the world to be there. But it was like the right thing that the sport needed at the right time.
Yeah. So I said the real world championship because it's funny. All these years later, it's still a question, right? Like one of the things we talked about over the years was like, if you want to get sponsors, how many world championships can there be?
Yeah.
And Spartan puts on like even more now than they did then. But there were other things buzzing about, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't even remember, but there was another USA OCR, another OCRWC. There was just like confusion about what was happening, where this was going.
Yeah.
And it was basically, it was a lot of Spartan versus the world. A lot of like Spartans doing their thing. No one else can play in their sandbox. And let's get these other brands together, all of which are gone, I think, except Savage, maybe. I mean, I don't know if you want to break it down, but none of them are left. And then, ironically, and obviously we'll get to this maybe in a part 2 episode, but like eventually you did. How do you explain it? Sell to Joe, merge with Joe? Like what? How do you explain the status of the race? And then we'll just go back some more.
Yeah. We sorry, I'm cutting out a little bit. I think I just got the feeling that I took it as far as I could possibly take it. Right. We have, again, this event was created by a small number of people in the grand scheme of things. It's one event a year, so we're limited in how we can scale it, and it was just the right time. Like I felt like, all right, I was the custodial owner of this thing for 9 years, and like I can't contribute and bring it to the next level, with my resources. So, in those instances, you look for somebody that can, hopefully do right by it and keep it going and kick it up a notch.
So I do want to bring up, like, I've got a video and there's a ton of pictures that I found and it's funny. It's like, did I take these on my phone? Like, I honestly don't even remember. Cause like, I certainly didn't have, we're looking at, like, I'm talking through a microphone in this thing called a Vocaster. I definitely did not have any of this. Feel like I barely had a smartphone and like a tiny little recorder.
But by the way, I go to my phone sometimes and I search, an iPhone, you can search in the photos by location. I search like Ohio, right? And I only have like 14 photos. And it's like, it's kind of annoying because it's like, well, I know this happened. I wish I could, still had some content I'm going to look at. But
so can you see this?
Yeah. That
so just tell people what we're looking at here, just these first few photos.
All right. So it looks like we've got first few photos are registration and check-in, and then we have our athlete welcome dinner, right? Which was held on Friday night. We've got a press conference. I think, Matt, you were the official host of the press conference, right?
I was the official, which is one of the things I want to say is that you wanted international athletes, and I went up to Dirk and said, you seem to be a guy that everybody likes and knows. And he was so excited. And he and I are really good friends. We've stayed in touch all these years. He's got a wife and 2 kids now. I mean, but just to let people know what we're looking at on this table, you've got Albin. That's not Amelia. Who is that?
I can't see. It's kind of small. Hang on. Let me make this bigger. I don't know.
How funny it is that we don't even fucking know. So Albin, a woman, Hobie, Atkins, Dirk, this age group guy. What's his name?
Is that Christian?
Chris Chapman?
Maybe. Oh man.
And then Claude and Jung Young.
Yeah.
Which is just like, that's a snapshot of, OCR in 2015 or 2014, right?
Yeah, like super early stages, right? Like big names coming out of nowhere. That was what was cool about it, right? I think that was the year Siri won from Sweden. No disrespect to him, but not a lot of people would have predicted that. And that was just cool.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things I remember is she went down to the ground and was crying, and then I started crying, and I looked over at you, and you were crying, and I was like, "Wow, this is pretty fucking special."
Yeah, yeah. It was just again, it was just a perfect moment. A lot of people with great aspirations, great intentions, and yeah, everybody bought into it, and I don't know, it's like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to start crying on your camera. So,
It's okay, you can. So it's okay to cry. So, and I guess let's back up a little bit. In 2014, I was a young man of 42. I had started my whole physical fitness life just 2 years before, which again is so crazy to think about when we look at these old events. Because even then, it felt like I said, that was my 71st race. Real quickly, I wanted to wear a shirt that maybe was OCRWC related, and all my stuff is in like boxes now. I only keep like the most recent 10 shirts in a drawer because I just have too many fucking t-shirts, as I'm sure you do. So the closest I could find is this VJ who was a sponsor. So it's the closest I can do is repping VJ here. But this thing had taken over my life. I decided to do a podcast, became my job. I think we've talked on podcasts before that you gave me my first paycheck. I wrote an article for your site, made $50. But who were you in 2014? I guess, like, how old were you? Were you married? Did you have kids yet? Like, what were you doing for work? What was your day job?
Married, no kids yet. Still, 2014. So I was, in HR, still in the art world. And I honestly had no fucking clue what I was doing. Like, I thought it was.
Why did you think you could be this person?
I didn't. I don't want to say like I was super confident that like I knew what I was doing, right? But I thought like, hey, like I've done some racing myself, right? And I've seen the impact that some of these races, especially these like bucket list A-type races, have on people's life, and it's incredible. So I thought like, hey, like how can we create that? And I did see where the sport was going with Spartan, Tough Mudder kind of feuding at the time, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
And there was such a spotlight on these brands, and having come off a few endurance races myself, I was like, you know what? I think the spotlight needs to shift a little bit, right? The spotlight needs.
So were you a triathlete? Were you an adventure racer?
I had done. I raced Ironman Lake Placid, and I did the Ironman, the U.S. Championships in New York, which is the only time New York City has ever hosted an Ironman. I think probably the only time they'll ever do it. And I did a Trans Rockies run right the year before in 2013, which was like 120 miles over about a week. And that experience in particular, run by Kevin McDonald, also known as Huda, was life-changing for me. I was like, I'm jealous of who produced this event. I'm jealous.
What's Huda?
He was the race director. He might have a more senior position now at Trans Rockies Run. And I was jealous of him. And I thought like, hey, like this organization, this guy's awesome. Like they've delivered these events and these experiences. I want to be able to do this. So I kind of just decided to do it. And I figured like, hey, at least, one of the skill sets I do have is putting people in the right places and playing to their strengths and assembling good teams. So let's hopefully fall back on that, right? It certainly wasn't perfect. That first year, my college buddies, I called them at one point and I said, hey, like, you want to come help out? Might need some help. And they drove, right? They drove from Connecticut and Massachusetts, 10, whatever, 12, 15 hours, drove there. I think when they rolled up, they expected to see a complete shit show. Right. But when they drove up, I was like driving around one of those, a side by side, one of the utility vehicles, and they had never seen me do that. Right. So they were like, what the fuck is going on?
They know you as like the HR guy.
Yeah. Exactly. So they showed up and they were like, this is the strangest thing in the world. Like you're talking into a walkie-talkie, you're on a radio with somebody, right? Like you've got work gloves on and running around like a madman. That was like nobody thought it was going to work. Like they showed up because they thought it was like a rescue mission, like a bail me out thing, and it kind of was. But
so it's, again, I'm trying to put it in perspective because it's really hard. But there was always a next thing. There was always a new thing. There was people wanting to do leagues, and just so I was skeptical as anybody. I was like, all right. And I remember Carrie, who used to work at Spartan, she said, this guy's the real deal. I've talked to him. He's the real deal. And I'm like, we'll see. And I think Amelia had talked to you, and she's like, he's the real deal. And again, I'm like, we'll see. So, I actually drove to this one. I'll pull up a quick one of those photos of my buddy registering here. So first of all, I just noticed there's Noah Galloway, who I just saw. So I just saw at High Rocks in June 2 months ago.
Operation Enduring Warrior that year, right?
Let me pull this up really quickly. Like I said, I don't want to spend the whole time just on this one race, but hang on. So first of all, look at that. That's just awesome. That's got to be like a race director dream come true. Tell people what we're looking at. Tell people what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So it's basically the finish line or start. No, sorry, that's start line. Start line. No, sorry, finish line. Just a lot of people, a sea of people sitting around. A lot of different groups. Probably a lot of languages, different languages being spoken. That's cool, right? Like that's like Woodstock vibe of like, hey, let's all just get together and hang out and support this thing, support each other. It was freaking cool.
And I think Amelia and I talked about that when I interviewed her. She's like, I was at breakfast and I heard, 4 different languages. I've never heard that at a Spartan race before. I've never heard that at any obstacle race in America before, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because what were there, like 500 people that first year? Like it wasn't that
I think
that big.
Total registrations, I think, were 667 people that first year.
Which is crazy low. Like that's not a lot of people. I mean,
I figured we were done. Like we were like, because the thing is, we weren't backed by like banks. We didn't have, private equity funds and people lending us money, right? It was like a small group of people that are like, hey, we're going to try to fund this on our own dime and see what things we could trade for. And that's what it was like, right? Like, let's just hustle. And if it works, great. If not, then we're like, we're kind of in a shitty spot financially, but what other time in history to get a chance to create this type of event for a brand new sport that at that point was outpacing, marathon and triathlon combined. It was like somebody's going to do this, so let's see if we can do it. If we can do it the right way, and hopefully everything else falls in line.
So I just want to quickly say, so this photo is, this is Justin Rose, and again, I just keep thinking about where everybody is now.
Yeah,
Justin Rose is now married with a kid. Mm-hmm. David McAleer on the end married another obstacle racer. They have a kid or 2 kids. Richard here, I think he's got kids now. I don't know, but we all piled in a van, basically. We all piled in a van. And what's really funny? Hang on, let me make sure this is working. Hang on one second. Sometimes the mic cuts out on this thing, and it's super annoying. Hang on. I should be able to see it.
By the way, even the background of this photo is hilarious. Like that first year, we ran out of food, right? Like I think the only one of the early only food vendors we had. Now we had the barbecue guy Bruce, who was freaking awesome. But like Subway sandwich shop showed up, right? they sold out of sandwiches. It was like okay, this is something we did not get right. People were hungry. The location was pretty remote, so yeah. I mean, every single photo probably has this like kind of strange story behind it. And
right. So so here's what happened. I had to be somewhere on Sunday afternoon that I had already planned for like months ago. Right. So we drove in a van. Somebody loaned us a van because there needed to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like I think 7 or 8 of us in the van. Why do I not hear myself? This might not work. And if it doesn't, I'll sound bad. You'll sound great. Oh, well. And nobody wanted to be in the middle of the back seat, right? So it was like I had to take the first shift of being in the middle, and I was really mad. Anyway, and then they drove me to the airport. I raced on Saturday. I drove to the airport like with my muddy clothes on, like got on a plane, and then I didn't see that famous team race So do you want to describe? Do you want to describe? It's funny. I said we should have a short course,
Yeah.
which obviously needed to happen. And now there's a short course and an even shorter course.
Yeah.
But can you explain? So I'll explain. Let's just watch the damn video and we'll talk about it. How about that? And like I said, we may have to do this one or more times again.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to turn the sound off so it doesn't blast everybody's ears. Look at that. Oh, there's Amelia.
Hearing, accents. There's like the Swedish team and the English team, and it's totally different. And it's kind of fun.
I mean, just the fact that, like you said, like all these nations did show up is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like that they actually believed you. How much money was given away? Because it's not like that was the only reason. But how much money?
I think we gave out like $80,000 that year, which was a big time mistake. That was at the point where we were doing like every age group winner also had prize, right? So we had $1,000 for every age group, $1,000 for every age group winner. I think then like $500 for second place, and like $250 for third place, right? But we also cut the age groups to 5-year increments. So that meant like men 30 to 34, 35 to 39, 40 to 44, 45 to 49, and I kind of thought for the age groups, the prize thing was the right thing to do. I thought it would help us get more people there too. And I think it probably did to some extent, but yeah, that was probably something we did not get right in terms of like sustainability for
right, because it's hard to back off of that.
Yeah.
When you get less another year. But so we're looking at this venue, and this is such a good memory for me.
Yeah.
It's fall obstacle racing, which, just such a big part of my life was this feeling, which I kind of miss. So it's a little cold and you're doing all this stuff that's out of your comfort zone anyway. Look at this random sticks obstacle.
That obstacle was like my idea. It didn't really work out. So, but because by the time everyone came through, all the sticks were broken. But
so, like in Georgia, we have races like this all the time. Like in September, October, I did a Jungle Cup in December. I remember. So there's Siri, who won the race, and nobody expected to. So here's this rig that most of us had never seen before, and no one could do it.
Yeah, but now it's like that would be considered like that would be on the kids course.
That's a basic, easy rig, and so you end up having Amy Pagic, Ninja Warrior, come in second.
Yeah, man, I definitely miss it. I don't know about you, but so this is crazy. But especially in the fall when the weather changes, it gets like a little bit colder.
Yeah, there's Chris from Mud Run Guide. I didn't realize that. I was right behind him because I think that's my GoPro. Maybe not. Sometimes we give the GoPro to somebody.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know if you get this vibe. Here's the vibe I get. Every fall when the weather changes, it gets like a little bit cold, right? And if I happen to like wake up super early in the morning and go outside and it's like a little bit chilly, I've got to like throw on a jacket or a hoodie. Like it makes me think about producing or being at events, right? It's a strange, even now, like if it's just a slight crisp breeze and the sun's just coming up, it makes me miss like producing events, especially like the moments before people show up, right? There's usually some scrambling going on. The crew's out there, checking obstacles, or like we're waiting for the first athlete to show up, opening up registration. Like those are kind of the moments that that I miss the most, right? Because it was like you got the adrenaline, you have no idea how the day's going to play out, right? And it's cool. And that hill, that hill in particular, Pinnacle Hill, was I still think probably the best single obstacle maybe in the history of obstacle course racing. I'm not exaggerating. Like you can fabricate anything you want out of scaff, you can use rigs, you can do everything. that hill was simply putting ropes down it at that scale. Best obstacle in history.
So one of the things in that article, or maybe look at the chains. This is where Bracken quit, by the way. This is the infamous race where Bracken, I think, walked off. One of the things I put in the write-up or in a podcast somewhere was Brett Stewart, who he and I have had our battles over the years. We made up in the end. He was commenting. He was the MC. And so when you were in the woods, you kind of heard it. So it's a 9-mile race up and down these woods. But all day I heard my friends' voices. He would say, you know, Justin Rose, you are an OCR world champion. And like kind of like Iron Man, that was the vibe. And I just heard that like all day. And I remember thinking it was so cool. And then when I finished, you know, he said my name. And it was just a special experience. I want to back up a little bit, though, and say, so like, you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. There had to be some kind of checklist you started. Like, I need medals. I need porta potties. Like, was there a book? Did you call your friend from Trans Rockies and get some kind of like book from him? Or how did you even begin to plan the thousands of details that need to happen at an obstacle race?
We definitely leaned on the Mud Guts and Glory crew because they knew how to work that venue. They knew about ordering porta potties and stuff like that. But a lot of the other stuff was like winging it, right? Like medals. I think I just Googled like, you know, race medals, and I think I used Hasty Awards, which was like the first thing that came up, right? That was the first thing. You know, I knew we need start arches, and I ordered arches that I thought the measurements were in feet and they were in meters, so they came out ridiculous looking. It was a lot of just winging it. I mean, I actually think the hardest part of producing that event most years was actually managing expectations for everybody that was involved, right? And what I mean by that is we had a lot of people that wanted to be involved in certain ways. And at the end of the day, we still had a very, very, very specific view of what this event would be. So, you know, we would have somebody who would like bring in a crazy obstacle, but we'd have to say, hey, this is too difficult for this race, or there aren't enough lanes, and I felt bad because these people were my friends, and I felt like I was letting them down. But like we had the battle to stay true to the vision of what the event was like that was the fight. Right, like getting registrations, people sign up. Like in the later years, that wasn't as hard. It was like gotta stick to the vision, right? Like that we gotta stick to the vision. We can't go off track, and you know, let one wrong thing happen, because that could just kill the entire event, right? I mean, we've certainly done it where we had, you know, an event an obstacle that was too difficult, and like then we're panicking. Like we've had to pull obstacles off the course mid race because of like, you know, because it's a bottleneck or something like that, right?
So wait a minute. I want to try to remember. Did we have bands, or did they mark our arms?
No, so we had people had bibs. They had to write their number on their forehead as well. I don't know why we did that. I have no idea why we did that. it just seemed like something that should happen, right?
That's what we did at Tough Mudder and Spartan, so why not?
Yeah, I can't remember if we did race numbers and tattoos, but I know it's something we wanted to do at one point, but I don't think we did that. And then we had Tyvek wristbands that were just like rip off, like you get at like a club or a concert or something like that. And people would wear them, and if you lost that band, because, you know, I was very adamant about doing mandatory obstacle completion because I thought it was the simplest thing to adjudicate and just how it should be.
Just let me stop really quickly.
Yeah.
Which now is kind of still the standard a lot of us want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And multiple attempt, mandatory, no perpy penalty bullshit. You were like, that was a brave move because no one had done that yet, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think Battle for Rock had just started to, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But OCRWC was kind of the like, oh, this is where you go if you know how to do obstacles. This race, very early on in those first 2 years, it was like, okay, Spartan World Championships is the best Spartan racer. OCRWC is the best obstacle racer. And again, it's so common now it flows off your tongue like mandatory obstacle completion. But I just feel like that was a bold move that worked.
Yeah, well, we prided ourselves on like, you know, in line with that vision, like trying to do things that we thought would evolve the sport, right? And mandatory obstacle completion for championship races in a very simple format is something I still feel very, very strongly about. It's like, think of it this way. Like when you're an athlete, what's your job, right? Your job at a race is to start the race and then get off that fucking course as fast as you possibly can, right? Like that's it. And so that means you need very simple mechanisms to referee that event, right? So that means you either complete the obstacle or you don't. It's a binary thing. You're either passing the obstacle or you're not. If you're not, cool, have a fun time, but you're not in that 100% completion thing. You're not in the podium. That's it. Same thing applies to obstacles. Make it from point A to point B. Very simple rules, and that's it. And I think that's like keeping true to the essence of a race, right? A race is to beat other people. It spends as little time on the course as possible, and that's it.
It's funny you talk about being it simple, but at the end, it was like you had to count your wristbands, and then you were manually adjusting the time. Because I remember I didn't complete everything. I forgot what I failed, but
yeah. We tried. This is actually kind of funny. Probably something that we haven't spoken about before. We tried, experimented with so many different ways to track these things, right? So it used to be, if you fail an obstacle, your band gets cut. That sucks. It's a pretty sad, emotional moment. The person there would write down your bib number on a clipboard, right? And would either call it in to a central place, like when there was downtime, say these athletes have been, and so that we can manually take them out of the results, or we would gather their sheets afterwards, right? Which was a nightmare because like you can't read people's handwriting. It rains, like we experimented with like we were like searching like waterproof pens at one point. And waterproof paper. We tried technology based, like where like each obstacle has a mat and you cross the mat at a certain point if you complete the obstacle, and if you don't, you go this way. And by getting that chip read, it was it would tell us that the person didn't pass the obstacle, and then we realized like we can't even source 65 mats, or at least at least 40 mats for the obstacles that people are likely to fail on. And like even like it's hard to even find these things like in the country, like 40 mats available on the same weekend using the same technology. Like it just doesn't exist, right?
Well,
so,
and it certainly didn't in 2014. There was an iPad. I mean, if they did, it would have been unbelievably expensive in 2014.
Yeah, totally. And we tried photographers. Trying to. And I like the stats. A lot of people like the stats of like who failed what obstacle had the highest failure rate, but that was an entirely manual process. We even, my partner and I, Rob, even one morning in Canada, I think it was Canada, we like decided the night before to drastically overhaul what we were going to do with these obstacles. So we went into our website, we built a back end so that, and then we actually printed QR codes and put them in sleeves. So every obstacle would have a QR code on it. And,
oh my God.
And the referee, what they would do is like scan the QR code on your bib and then scan the QR code on the obstacle, and that would tell a system.
What a nightmare.
I'm not exaggerating. We built this the night before the race one year. And we were like, all right, it's probably, if you go to the back end of the OCRWC website, it's probably still there. You might even be able to search for it. It might even be public. But we actually built this thing out. So it was like, all right, athlete fails, just scan their bib, right? And that automatically would tell us that athlete 1, 2, 3 has failed this obstacle, right? And then
unless you miss them going through, or unless it doesn't work. I mean, there's just so many problems.
Or their bib is crumpled or missing. Or
so at what point were you eating breakfast and like, oh, this is fucking stupid? Well, like,
exactly. like you know what? Here, I think the moment was like, all right. It was like the volunteer briefing, and it was like, all right, who's gonna explain this to all the officials and volunteers that are going out on the course? And we're like, and some people are like, oh, I don't have my cell phone with me.
Oh my God.
I don't have service because I'm from South Africa and I'm in like Canada, and I'm like, this is not gonna work at all. right? So we just scrapped it. But it was essentially an all-nighter the night before an event to try to build this thing. It could probably actually work now, right? Scan somebody's QR code and it'll tell you what obstacle you're at and that they're out. But yeah, like that, we abandoned ship on that, like at the probably half an hour before we deployed officials and volunteers.
So I went to the first two, and then I missed England the next 2 years.
Well, Canada, and then
sorry.
Yeah.
It was 2 Canada years. I missed the first one. Yeah, I
Mhm.
missed the first Canada year, and I made it to Blue Mountain the second year. And by that time, like, it's really becoming like the event to go to. And Blue Mountain was amazing. If you went to Stratton or you've been to Tahoe, that vibe that you're in the town, we're all hanging out together before, during, after the races. I stayed with my buddy Keith Allen for one of the nights. But the event it's still great. It's funny. I'm remembering rain at that race and cold and being freezing. But what year was it? Because like I feel like we don't even have time to cover that you did a fucking 24-hour race in Australia.
Yeah.
But when did you know? When did you think if we're legit, we got to go to the UK, we got to go to Europe? Like, where was that in the mental? Like, what year did you think we had to go before you actually went?
2016. It was after we did the event in Blue Mountain for the first year.
First Blue Mountain year.
It was like, okay, this thing needs to travel. After that first year at Blue, which I think I felt like that was the first time I felt like, okay, we did a good job, right? This was not a home run, but really good that first year. And I remember we were going back to Canada for a second year. There was an option to go back for the second year. And after that first year, we were pretty sure we were going to do it. And
do you want to know how many finishers you had in 2016? I just pulled it up.
No, how many?
2958.
Okay. All right. Good. So, all right. So get 2017. I'm curious about that jump. But after that first year in Blue, I was like, okay, this is a real thing. It's not good. It's not going to go away. And I remember that part of the struggle was like kind of getting athletes to not think it was going to be back at Blue Mountain. And we were doing that because, like, I think housing, like the hotel room at the resort, were filling up so quickly before we had announced where we were going. So it was like people were signing up. We're not 100% certain we're going there. I'm also thinking, like, I got to house myself and the crew, right? And these hotels are selling out. So, but at that moment, I was like, all right, we've got to do another year in Blue, and then we've got to go abroad.
So 2017, is that the second?
Yeah. Yep.
4311.
Yeah.
It actually says I don't even have the team results. This is just 3K, 15K.
Yeah.
And everybody gets counted whether they run once or twice, so we don't know. But that's the only number that we have.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what the jump was to 2018? This is the first England year, right?
Yeah. What was it?
4772. Okay. So like every year you're crushing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, right. That means
we were on, like,
were those years, were you, again, I know you as a pretty, I'd say, conservative guy, right? Like, you would never come out and be like a lot of these guys are like, we're going to have 10,000 people. So those numbers, as you hear me read them, do you remember thinking like, that's about what we thought? Or, oh, wow, this overshot that year? Like, do you remember what you felt like back then?
I think when the first time I thought of this, I thought we had pulled 2,000 to 3,000 people. So that was kind of what I modeled everything off of. Right.
So year one in Ohio, you thought?
Yeah, I thought we'd do 2,000 to 3,000 people.
And when you got 600, were you devastated, or like then the event was amazing and you thought, okay,
I was like, how are we going to pay this prize purse? Right. Like the saving grace in that was we didn't pay the prize. We didn't have to pay the prize purse immediately after year one because we had done the drug testing. Right. So we were like, all right, let's wait. Like,
that's the other thing you were way ahead of, bro.
Yeah. So we're like, let's get the
drug. Bart still hasn't caught you in 10 years, 12 years.
We were like, okay, so the drug testing thing actually just bought us time because it took 10, 11, 12, 2 weeks to get the results, whatever it was. And that allowed us to open up registration for the next year, which allowed us to pay the prize purse for the previous year, right? Once our numbers got better, then we obviously didn't have that problem. But yeah, I modeled this thing on like 2,000 to 3,000 people. That was it. Right.
So when you put these like decks together, right, for sponsors, I mean, you got to pad those a little, right? That's part of the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's always a forecast too, right? You're guessing, you're counting spectators. Like I think we usually say like we say 4 to 5K or something like that.
Right.
It depends. If some years when we did have to count spectators, like in the UK, it was like 6 or 7.
Do you remember calling me, and I'm sure there were a few other people in your trusted circle, and saying, "Hey, ESPN has offered us a pay for play. Should I do it?"
Yeah.
And I said no. I said it's cool. It feels cool. It's a brand builder. But at the end of the day, like wait. And you still did did you end up doing a sort of a pay for play in the UK, or what did you end up doing?
Yeah, it was kind of similar, right? So, so the context is like, again, I'm like an idiot. I didn't know what I was doing. and all of a sudden ESPN wants to put this on their network on ESPN2, right? And I'm like, it's very surreal. I'm like a bunch of chuckleheads, me and my friends have made an event, and now it's going to be on TV. This is cool, right? So we're like, all right, we got to figure out how to do this. We put together like this RFP. We'll talk to a bunch of, ESPN had their list of like preferred production houses to do this stuff. And actually, I tapped into Scott Keneally because he had some experience doing this as well. And we got quotes. And quotes ranged from like $200,000 to do the production to like over $1 million, right? And it just like financially, obviously a non-starter, right? Like,
but can you explain to people just like what that means? Because some people think like, well, if I'm watching a sport, it's because ESPN is like doing this. So can you kind of explain even how pay for play like works?
Yeah. So ESPN basically offers up slots, like a window to broadcast your show, your event, or anything else. Certain ones they produce themselves. Other ones they're basically give you the spot for free. You pay for all of the production costs, and then you'll work out some deal where you split the commercial airtime. So let's say it's a 1 hour program, right? There'll be about 16 minutes of commercial airtime. You pay for the production. You get 8 of those 16 minutes to sell against for your own sponsors. ESPN takes the other 8 and they sell that commercial airtime to their database. Right?
So you could find someone as big as, just throwing it out there, like Reebok, right? You could find that your own ad, and like you get to keep that. Or if VJ wanted to give you a bunch of money, but like you could do whatever you want with those 8 minutes.
Yep. So I was walking around trying to find sponsors to fund this thing, right? I was talking to a lot of different companies saying, hey, if you give us $200K, this will be the, OCR World Champions powered by whoever, by Nike. And you'll get, 8 minutes of commercial airtime and spots to use.
Plus logos at the site and all that stuff.
They don't care about that stuff. At the time, they were like, digital was coming up. They're like, well, you're going to probably air on a Saturday in the fall afternoon on ESPN2, and you're going to be competing against college football. So, and you're going to air maybe twice. So I don't care. Like,
well, here's what's funny though, real quick for people who care about this stuff. Whatever that number was is probably 10x what it would be today.
Yeah.
Because there was no streaming. People weren't really watching on their phones yet. 2014, you still would have been seen by probably 500,000 people, right?
Yeah. But it just, and so it just didn't work. And then, of course, ESPN has standards, right? You can't just say, hey, I can't be like, hey, Matt and Brett are going to film this thing and put it on. They're like, no, here are the production houses you basically have to use, right? And they're like IMG, like huge entities. And it's like, yeah, we'll do this for you. It's $1 million, and that's our discounted rate. And like, that doesn't work, right? So that wasn't going to happen. We eventually did do it for the UK in 2018. We found a production partner out there that had more reasonable costs. They had good distribution across Europe and Asia, a little bit in the US, but they got on Amazon Prime. It might still be on Amazon Prime if you want to watch the broadcast. It's
But
definitely
back then no one had Amazon Prime, and I remember that being a thing. Like, where can I watch this? And you're like,
Right.
do you have Sky Sport? And I'm like, no.
Yeah. I mean, it was on Channel 4 in the UK, which is huge, which is huge. So that was like a awareness marketing thing for us. It was also kind of cool because me and my buddy Rob we're in the credits on one of these things under our I don't even know if I should say this, under our pseudonyms of in one of the credits, which actually I think we got caught on, and they were like, hey, you can't do this, like, legally. We can't air a show with the producers being under fake names or something like that. But they're not like fake names like Al Smith. They were like nicknames that we had in like college. So,
but see, I thought people do that, like when they want their names off the credits. No, I remember it being a big deal, and I remember it looking pretty good, right?
Yeah, still looks good to this day. It still looks good.
But yeah, I do remember, like, I forgot when I saw it, but again, this is back when like appointment viewing still mattered. I remember when Spartan aired the Vermont championships of, I think, 2013. It was like Christmas Day or Christmas week. I had people at my house, which you would kind of never do now, right? Because you'd be like, yeah, I'll watch it when I feel like it. But it was like a viewing party.
Yeah.
So you're in England those 2 years, and the momentum still feels really strong, right?
Yeah.
Because like the UK had this huge base, and like Mudstickle was doing their thing, and it felt like things were still. So where were you in, like, okay, should we go to Europe or come back to America? Like, where were you like 2017, 2018?
Yeah. So we were in the UK for 2018, 2019, right? And honestly, it was challenging, right? It's like the only thing, a way for me to describe it is like, imagine starting a business in a country that you know nothing about the laws. You don't have a bank account. You don't have an address. You don't speak the language in certain places. So, when people are like, hey, bring it to Chamonix and Paris, I'm like, I don't speak French. I don't understand how to operate a business there. It's not something you just kind of show up and do, right? So after 2019, I was like, all right, probably let's bring it back. We had done NORAM at Stratton. We loved Stratton, still do. So let's bring it back and to Stratton. So that was the game plan, bring it back stateside, because we couldn't find a production partner in Europe that we kind of trusted to do a good job. And we, like, I wasn't about to move there and spend a year there trying to figure out how to do it. So, like, we didn't really have any other choice.
So it was supposed to be Stratton 2020.
Yeah.
Do you remember what month you canceled it? Because I don't. I could Google it.
I think it was between March and June, because everything kind of shit the bed in March. I mean, actually, was it March? It was the first half of that year for sure. And like, registration was doing well. Sponsors were stoked. Athletes were happy. People in the U.S. felt like reinvigorated because it was coming back to the U.S. And I think we were poised for our best year in history, like best year ever. Like, every indication would have been like, we could produce, like, forget Ohio, forget Blue Mountain, forget the UK. What we're going to produce is going to just, knock the socks off of everybody. We're going to have the fireworks show. We're going to do all these different things. And then COVID hit, right?
And you had done so. You had, when it was in England, you did launch a. First year it was U.S. championships, right, in Texas,
And
then NORAM in, and I thought it was smart. I thought, well, listen, if they're going to lose some American audience who can't make it to England, how about have this NORAM, which kind of becomes, kind of like the OCRWC vibe for the year. So do you think that was, like, where do you rank that in good idea, bad idea? Glad we tried it.
Texas was tough. Texas was probably a bad idea. We also held it on Labor Day weekend, which I thought, like, maybe I got a little arrogant when we did that, because I was like, hey, Labor Day weekend, holiday thing, people will still show up. They'll take the time to travel. But with, like, school starting, I think that was probably.
But then wasn't that also one of those, like, you got fucked by weather 2 years?
Well, there's a hurricane that hit Texas that year, and like deliveries weren't running. Half the state was underwater. It was a bad situation. I forgot what hurricane was, Hurricane Felix or something like that. But that was just a bad time. Stratton was awesome because they're great partners, and we learned how to use that mountain, and you learn where you can build and can't build. All the they learn as well. So it was great. So NORAM was good. Texas was fun. Texas was actually, attendance wasn't great, but it was a like really, really good course, right? If I could take that course and transplant it to a different weekend and maybe a different location that's not devastated by a hurricane, like that would go down as one of the best. So I wish more people had seen that course.
And then 21, we start to events start to come back, but there's massive issues. People can't fly.
Yeah.
Some places
travel restrictions were like
some places you don't. I remember Rio. That was basically, hey, if you don't want to do this event, don't do it. But if you do want to do it, get your shot, because people were losing their minds, like either way.
Yeah.
And I made a video that was like, cool, don't want to do it, don't get a shot. You do want to do it, get a shot. That's it. Like, move on with your day.
There were two things that year. So one, 2020 was like, we had no event in 2020, right? We postponed, let's say it was like between March and June. I think it was June, because we wanted to give people, I think the timing was like, we had to give people at least 3 months notice, right? Of like go, no go. So we were like, all right, let's not do it. So 2020 fucking sucked. It was like trying to keep the lights on and keep this company in business, and also keeping people like Rachel and people who relied on us for income whole. Doing those things while you have zero, like registration wasn't open, right? It was shut down. It's like keeping a store open, but your doors are locked for a year straight, right? You still have all the other bills to pay. You got to do the marketing, maintenance, everything. That was awful. 2021 happened, and we still have heavy travel restrictions. So like only people that can basically go are people that drive in from Canada, or drive in from Canada, or people in the US. Or if you're in Canada for at least 2 weeks, you can then enter, like there's a time thing where you have to be at least in Canada for 14 days. Then if you come in from another country, then you can drive across, right? And we had half the community saying, this is bullshit. You shouldn't host the race because it's not a true world championship, because only Americans and Canadians can be there.
Right.
We've got other people saying, no, like let's do this thing. COVID's behind us. Like let's get back to normal. And then we had, and then I still had all the other obligations to staff. And so it's like, and we still have safety concerns, both the town, the city, the state, like safety concerns around like, hey, you're bringing a lot of people into a very small town, and we're worried, right? So like we've got to make these decisions on like what's the safest thing to do. And this is that, also still kind of a little bit close to the peak COVID. Like people didn't know what was going on. Like
not a fun time, as I recall.
And I had friends and family that were still being hospitalized for COVID, right? And so we had like everything for 2-year period, everything was working against us. From like, you're out of business, you're not hosting a race this year, to like you can host a race at like a fraction of the people that are allowed to come. Not to mention that we didn't charge people who had already signed up for 2020. So we allowed them to carry their entries into 2021, which meant we were basically producing a race for free. And then because the people that couldn't travel as well in 2022, they had free entry. So it was like for like a 3-year period, we had 1 year of not producing a race, 2 years of basically producing a race for free, because people didn't need to buy tickets again, because they already paid for their ticket. It didn't feel right to charge them again on top of that. And like by some miracle, we survived.
Yeah, so I was there both of those Stratton years. Yeah, I was there both of those years. And I'm trying to remember, was it still like wear masks at the start, which is stupid, but we did it? I can't remember if we did that the first year.
I don't know if I think we did masks inside registration. We had either proof of negative test or vaccination, right? which was for us was like, for me, that was like our compromise, right? If you don't want to get vaccinated, cool. We're not going to force you. Nobody should force you to get vaccinated, but it just in the interest of your fellow community members, just take a test, right? It takes 15 minutes. And I've never received such threatening, derogatory, insulting messages from people that I thought I was friends with, right? Like people that I could like call up, like I would call up you and say, hey, here's why we're doing this, right? Like there are safety concerns. If we're going to produce this event, here's what we have to do. And so like all you need to do is either just take a test and it takes 15 minutes or get vaccinated, right?
Right. I forgot. I was saying get a shot or not, but it was, just take.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, I had people saying like, no way are you going to fucking stick a Q-tip up my nose and like, I'm a communist pig and
basically
burn in hell. Like comments about like me, about our staff, my family. Like it was like, you know, of course we're not going to go out and put this stuff out and be like, hey, look what this person said to me and called me like, you know, like these names. But that was tough, right? Because you know, this was an event that we created to serve the community, and I wanted to. It was deflating.
Yeah, dude, I can imagine how bad it was for you for something like that because you're always gonna get you know, a lot of opinions on Facebook regardless about everything as a race director. And so, yeah, that had to be a rough. It looks like you're looking at your clock. Do you got to jump?
No, I actually do, but tell you I have more time, so I'm good.
Oh, good. All right, awesome.
I'm good for like another half an hour if you need to.
Awesome. Well, let's do it. Let's stick around. Good. I'm glad. So obviously we don't want to redebate the pandemic, but I just want to say, because I don't think I've ever talked about this on here, that we all have tolerance of, and those tolerance changed over the years because we were all like, I'm going to be a good citizen. I'm not going to go to parties. Right. And then it was like, well, I'm going to hang out with these 10 friends that I know have been tested. And then year and a half, fuck this. I'm going out. Right. And so did my morals change of the kind of person I was? It's like, that's just how it went. And even if how do I say this? Oh, and like, I'm going to get vaccinated because I think that's the healthy thing to do. And then 6 months later, they said, get another one. And then 6 months later, when they said, get another one, I was like, nope, I'm good. Yeah. Now, again, my morals as a human being didn't change. I was just like, now I'm at the point where I feel like I've done what I can. And even if they were overly cautious, what's the worst thing that happened? I got tested a few times. I got a couple shots. I got a swab up my nose. You know, it's like, I wasn't, my life didn't change. My humanity didn't change. My freedoms didn't change. And the worst case scenario is I wore a mask longer than I wanted to, and I thought it was stupid. The worst thing for me, honestly, was taking flights. I couldn't fucking believe that you're making me sit this way for the entire time. And then I take a bite of food and I put it back down. Like, to me, that was the most insane thing. Other than that, we all survived.
Yeah, and it's tough too. Like humans are like insanely complex, right? And we evolve over time. So like the thought process for some people, it changes, and you learn things as you go on, right? I remember being in lockdown and like in tears in the bathroom, right? Because I'm like, I live in New York City. I didn't leave New York City for the most part during the lockdown. I'm like looking at the park and it's like completely empty. It feels like the end of the world, right?
Yes.
It felt like, you know, like this park that's normally packed has not a single person going through it, right? You're going through freaking supermarkets like Pac-Man, like somebody else is on the aisle and that's the ghost.
Forget it. Go the other way.
And people have different tolerances for those things. I remember at one point, I know it's not OCR related at all, but like, you know, I have older parents. My wife has older parents, right? And I'm like, hey, I think I want to have everyone get tested before Christmas, just to be safe. Like these people are older. Like I don't want to be the reason why, you know, one of my parents passes away because I didn't stick a Q-tip up my nose for 15 seconds. Like, fuck that. Like, so I'm just going to do it. And I'm a little bit inconvenient, but I think it's the right thing to do. I've had in the same scenario, some people say, well, like that's ridiculous. And, you know, I said, well, what happens if somebody dies? And like, you know, these are people that have history of cancer and everything else. It's like, well, maybe it's just that time. It's that time, that person's time to go. And like, but it doesn't need to be now. Like, like it could be, it could be like 10 years from now. It doesn't need to be right now. So like, even if I'm wrong, what have I lost in this? Right? Like 30 seconds of my time. I don't care.
All right. I don't want to stick too long on that.
Yeah,
I do want to say I did lose.
I can feel the messages coming in now, like yelling at me about how I'm an idiot.
It's okay.
And what I've lost is my freedom, blah, blah, blah. So
right. Yeah. Anyway. So, and I want to say I did lose my dad during COVID. My dad was 89.
Thanks.
And he was we had put him in a home. Mm-hmm. No other way to say it. It's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And sadly, I couldn't go in there. Like, we talked through the window. The last conversation we had, I took pictures. There's one up on my fridge. I could cry now. And when he died, it was like, what did he die of? And it's like, was it COVID? It's like, maybe he was just 89. You know what I mean? Like, I still don't know. But like, it could have been complications from that, because supposedly this place, this nursing home, I can think of the phrase, hadn't had an outbreak yet. And then all of a sudden this happened. So anyway, that's just a little personal anecdote. But let's get back to the race. Here's something I want to say. Like, you and I have had way more conversations off the record than on. And I would consider you a friend, Adrian. And we haven't always agreed. And sometimes I thought it was even against my best business interest, the things you were doing. But I'm so glad that you and I are friends, like, through all this. So one thing I know we can joke about, or I hope we can, is you used to be a lot more wishy-washy. You used to really take those comments personally.
Yeah.
Matt, what should I do? And I'd say, Adrian, you're never going to make everybody happy. You'd be like, I know, but. So when did that switch? When did you go from less cautious Adrian to fuck it, these people can suck it, it's my race?
I promise you I'm not kissing your ass on this, right? But like, there were a lot of times when I called you and I was like I need your opinion on whatever, like world obstacle, this race, that race, didn't matter, right? And you kept driving that home, and then that coupled with some of the other people telling me the exact same thing, I was like, you know what, maybe I do need to evolve a little bit, and I need to get a little bit of a thicker skin. It's fucking hard. Like, it's still hard, right? Like, and there are times when I catch myself, even now, even last night, like on Facebook comments, not related to the race, but I'm like, why am I even bothering typing this out, right? Who am I arguing with? Am I like, why? Well, this is somebody I'd probably be totally cool with if they were here. So I mean, you were a big part of that, and it's still like, I'm still pretty sensitive around those things, right? Like, I'm still very particular. I still feel this like insane connection to the race, and I want to see it do well. But yeah, it was first couple of years were really, really, really hard, especially when we made mistakes. Like, that was,
well, I'm trying to think of the biggest mistakes, quote unquote, and the biggest mistake I can think of, if anything, is a couple of times maybe the percentage was too high on an obstacle. Is that the biggest mistake you made? Like,
no,
what are you worried about, or what do you like when we look back on that's like, oh, we blew that in a big way, not just we stayed up all night and tried this crazy thing, but what do you like?
We tried a dumb obstacle in the UK. No, sorry, not dumb obstacle. We tried an obstacle that was not fit for our race in the UK, called Caterpillar, and it had to be pulled, and it was too difficult to do. We didn't have enough apparatuses. We didn't expect the retries to take that long.
Oh, so you had backups. That's the big thing, backups.
And I went into my hotel room that night, and I basically cried. And I was like, and my brother-in-law was there with me, and like, I remember sitting at a desk, my head down, and I was like, fuck, we just fucked this up for like, whatever, 50 people that were impacted. Like, what are we gonna do? It's embarrassing, and blah blah. That was a mistake. Yeah, that was a mistake. And that came from the battle of like, hey, somebody has put a lot of thought into something and they want to be part of the race and they think it's a good idea. And that battle of like, I don't want to let them down, but I also am responsible for doing this race. So let's take a gamble and see if it works. And that was not the right decision.
So it was the backups, just to kind of tell the whole story. There were backups.
Yeah.
So people are like, my time sucked. I didn't finish where I wanted my age group. This isn't this isn't a test of anything because you fucked up. Like, that's basically the biggest mistake you made.
I mean, honestly, that's the one I could think of right now. There were a lot. I'm sure there were a lot of other mistakes, right? I remember there's a gentleman from the UK, Barry Buchanan, who we DQ'd from a race I don't feel particularly great about how we did it, and I don't feel great about the results. I think I was heavy-handed in my approach on that, and I felt fucking awful for a year. And thankfully, he came back. He came to Stratton the next year and won his age group, and I felt like we got a little bit of redemption on that. And I gave him a giant hug, like we're cool with each other. But that was like, to me, a sign that, like, that, I don't know, not a sign. It just was not the right result.
I
fucked with somebody's athletic career for a year, right? That was like, if I'm going to cry about something, it's probably be that. But
would you say, if you don't want to like relitigate it, we don't have to. When you say heavy-handed, do you mean like you were mean to him when you kicked him, DQ'd him, or when you say heavy-handed?
Well, I mean, no, I mean, there are a lot of different variations of what happened. I didn't see what happened. I relied on the opinion of officials and stuff like that, and we removed somebody from the course, and it kind of just blew up. And I feel like maybe if we had slowed down a little bit in the heat of the moment, we would have had a different outcome, right? And there are a few other scenarios like that. Like, I think Mike King, I think does a King's Domain OCR used to. He was in the UK, and he was him and somebody else.
King's Domain is the name of the video that we did. You sure?
Sorry, King's Dominion. Then there's two different things. There's another one very similar, and him and another athlete were DQ'd by officials on Skitch in the UK, and I was like, the officials and I couldn't do anything about it. The officials had already DQ'd him, but I remember thinking, like, fuck, this is somebody who, by all means, is a good athlete, a decent person. He flew over here from like somewhere in the US, and he got DQ'd. And was that an overzealous official? You know, I don't know, but could we have done something different? Could we have just said, hey guys, you guys both need to chill out and keep going on the course? Like, those are the moments where I feel like I let myself and other people down the most.
Do you remember, I want to say it was, I can't remember if it was first Blue Mountain. Well, I only went to Blue Mountain once, so it had to be the second year. Didn't Hunter get DQ'd for something on the team's race?
Oh yeah, Hunter missed the bell in front of the COO of Adventurey, my business partner, who is not on social media. Like, nobody in OCR would know this guy except for like Rachel and Fran and a few other people.
Are you talking about Rob?
Yeah.
Because I finally met Rob. I didn't know he existed.
Yeah.
I thought maybe he was, for years when you said my partner, I was like, I think Adrian's made this guy up, so you have a scapegoat. I finally met him.
He was happened to be officiating that obstacle, and Hunter missed the bell and tried to stop him, and he just kept running. And so at the end, like, hey, like, this sucks, but he didn't know who Hunter was. He's like, hey, the big beefy blonde guy like, didn't listen to us. And I was like, which guy? He's like, that. I mean, he's like, that guy with the tattoo. I'm like, oh fuck. Like, it was like I gotta walk over to Hunter and tell him, and of course, Rob has no idea who this guy is. He just cares about fairness in the race. He had so it's not like it's gonna be a targeted thing. And then there was also video afterwards, but it was like, okay, like, Hunter, like, you just ignored an official second to last obstacle. Like, this isn't cool, right? But Hunter was a good sport about it, and it's funny because we ended up having a laugh about it, because like, he had gotten DQ'd, I think, from that race, maybe another one as well. And then finally, like, it was kind of like, finally he broke through and like podiumed at one of our races, but it took a while because it was like, there was always something, right? But yeah.
Yeah, my memory was like he kicked it and wasn't supposed to kick it, but it was like he just missed it.
I think he just missed it entirely, and a few officials, including Rob, were like, hey, dude, you missed that bell. You got to go back.
Do you have a rule on kicking the bell?
Yeah, don't do it. It's hand only.
What is your feeling on? I don't know why I'm doing this, but like, I remember the other controversy we had at the last race, not OCRWC, not Mammoth, the last Blue Mountain, or the last Stratton. If there's an obstacle that goes up like this, do you have to touch every bar, or can you just get to across the other side?
Obviously, it should be.
What's
the
name of the obstacle? First of all, what's the name of the obstacle?
Valkyrie.
Are you sure Valkyrie's not the low one?
No, that's Canyon.
What's Canyon? Canyon's the low one.
Canyon's the low one. Valkyrie is
Okay.
the apex.
Okay. So what do you think the rule should be?
Skip the ring. If you have the athleticism to like skip the rings, like swing from ring 2 to like ring 12, go for it. The controversy in that one is the rules as they were written, if I recall correctly, was like athletes ascend a ring structure through an apex and down to ring a bell, right? And the official, I think it was Dave, said like interpreted that through the apex, meaning like you've got to touch the apex, right? So he was having everybody touch that, and Rose, who's like does not get enough credit for the level of sustained athleticism that she's had in her career. It's freaking ridiculous. You know, as a mother and somebody who's had this longevity in the sport, it's incredible.
She's raced against every generation of obstacle racers.
It doesn't matter.
She's always at the top.
It doesn't matter. She's always at the top. She had the athleticism to skip it, right? And she did, and then she got called back. And she was great about it. She's like, yep, you know, like I understand the interpretation. I should have just been more thorough and done it. So it wasn't a big deal, but like, you know, that's another thing to learn. We should like, you know, when we described and put the rules for that obstacle.
I think this is one of those questions about obstacle racing, and John Albin was the first to say this when he got screwed in some Euro championship or a UK championship. Mm-hmm. He's like, why can't we simplify this? We don't want to book. We don't want obstacle racers to have to read a book.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be different across.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having big problems with this, it sounds like, still over with these Euro champs and with these potential world obstacles.
Yeah.
You can touch here but not here, and then different. Yeah. It just seems like there could be a simpler way to do it. Just like make everything red, don't touch the red, like shit like that we haven't quite figured out in the sport yet.
You've got athletes speaking 40 different languages at some of these events, right? Like you should almost be able to like walk up the obstacle, point to where they need to go, like go that way, slap the bell, and that's it, right? So like when there's things like, oh, don't touch this bolt, or I don't know, like you've got, I think they're using like a three band wristband system, and then penalty laps at the end, right? That's just, it's not our style. Like was not our style. It's got to be super simple. Athletes, when they're racing hard, they've got, you know, the adrenaline running. They shouldn't have to stop at a race and like think about what they read the night before. For the most part, of course, there are safety things. You don't want to see somebody, you know, standing on top of a rig. That's ridiculous. People will figure it out. Like, you know, when you have a couple thousand people will think of all these different variations. We've had athletes that had the athleticism to jump through an obstacle entirely and hit a bell without touching any apparatus, like on our 100-meter. And we didn't change the rules mid-race. We just said, hey, we now need to learn for next year. The bell either needs to be higher or the rig needs to be longer, because some of these people are so good at what they do that they can jump, you know, 15 or 20 feet.
Do you think it's fair if I'm an obstacle racer and I've done obstacle X because it's in my country or in my state and I've done that obstacle a bunch and I've never seen it? Have you ever had open course? Because that's one of the things I talked about with Stein was give everybody open course on Friday and then try it all the different ways you want to try it.
We haven't done that. And I'll say this. Part of the reason OCRWC exists is to support the sport and drive participation in all races. Right. So if you own a race, Matt, in Atlanta, and you're going to feature an obstacle at our race, right? We want people to sign up for your race, and you want people to sign up for your race because they want to experience and try out this obstacle before they compete on it, before they compete at OCRWC on it. That's cool. Right. So is it like completely fair? I don't know. I also don't know an alternative. Right.
But have you ever considered that the open race, the open, you know, heat on Friday, let people do whatever they want. Get the open the course for 2 hours, do whatever you want.
No, only because I didn't need to add more things to worry about, right? Like we already had enough of an issue with like athletes still on the course trying things out because they didn't read the rules or they don't speak English or they just didn't know. Like, I can't add more to the weekend and not go insane.
So do you know when we got through those two Stratton years?
Yeah.
And do you remember when you started thinking like, okay, I think this might be my last year?
Yeah, it was probably that last year in Stratton. It was just like, my son was getting older, priorities were shifting, right? Like probably some of the names we've spoken about, people, who now have kids and families. Ryan and Lindsay have a daughter, right? Which is awesome. I'm sure their priorities are going to shift a little bit, and things just change. And for me and Rob, we were like we've been doing this for a long time, and it's approaching a decade, and we've done everything we can in the space. So time to go.
How was last year for you?
It was good. It was kind of bittersweet. It was awkward. It was a little awkward for me because I was trying to figure out how do I fit in here. It was, Mammoth is stunning, just incredible venue. Race was a good race, but it was a little awkward for me because like bittersweet, right? There were a lot of tears at the end, and I was no, so it was saying goodbye to some people, it was the end, but it's not. It's it was kind of a little awkward space for me, and also I'm annoying. I'm annoying to work for because I'm pretty particular, right? So I'm like, hey guys, we don't use white zip ties, we use black zip ties.
Ah, yeah. I'm sure they were thrilled to hear that.
Yeah. Like that's not, and it's not my race anymore, right? So I can't be like, hey, go swap out these zip ties at 2:00 in the morning because they should be black, right? And yeah, so that was a little bit, I think any business owner, when they pass something on, they're thinking well, I would have done it a little bit differently. But again, I think it was a great race, great venue. Spartan has a lot more resources than we do. I think some of us that were there were holy cow! They have an army of people that roll in for this thing, 100
right.
roll in for this thing. We roll in with 20,
6.
Yeah. They have they have somebody preparing lunches for the crew, and I'm like, hey guys, bring your sandwich up that mountain, up to the top of that mountain. You're not down until midnight. So, right. Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like this was actually pretty good. We got a lot covered. We still maybe should do a part 2. I was thinking maybe if after this airs, I put out a list of questions,
yeah,
and then we could do another one that way. Will you be in Mammoth this October?
I'm planning on it. Yep, I'm planning on it. Excited to see what they have. I think they're using a different part of the mountain. Now I saw the athlete posters got posted today. That was cool. So I'm sincerely interested in seeing what Spartan can do with this thing.
Athlete posters mean the big poster that says Lindsay champion 2019, like that?
Yeah, we put all the names of the participants in a poster.
That athlete poster.
Yeah.
I do remember seeing that the second year though, and thinking ooh, this is legit. You made those big posters right after year 1.
Yeah. So we did this we did the big poster. We did some banners. There were a lot of ideas that we started and didn't finish. I thought it'd be cool to have a banner of each previous champion in the finish line shoot, right? So you have John Albin, Lindsay, and everyone else.
But weren't they in that hall though?
We which hall?
Where we ate. What do you call that? Where we ate meals those first 2 years.
At Blue or at in Ohio?
I feel like the second year in Ohio, you already had a poster of
we had some stuff up there, and that's actually when we started doing the flags, the one-way flags with the kind of corridor of champions, and then we started adding more events, and we're like, shit, are we gonna do just the 15K, just the 3K, and then who's gonna order these flags?
Are they in a closet somewhere? Because I would love one of them for my.
We have so much branding, or Spartan has so much branding of ours now.
Is it all in the big truck?
Yeah, trucks. Yes, trucks, multiple trucks. So yes, it's all still there. Yeah, I snagged a few things that were sentimental to me, one of the banners from first year in Ohio. So first year medal, that type of stuff.
And there you have it. That was Adrian. Thank you so much for watching / listening. As I said, recording one intro, baby, one YouTube, one same one for podcast. We do have ways you can support this channel. One is liking and subscribing. I don't know who actually ever does that. I got to be honest with you. Every video you've ever watched, we say to do that. And then we've got to the point where we even joke about it, right? Smash that like button, or if you don't subscribe, I'm going to kill you. Like, we all do that. But I don't know that I've ever actually done it when they say that. I just do it at some point later, maybe if I'm watching it and I think about it. So I don't know how that all works with the brains of people, but that's the way you can support the show. Another way I always say is tell a friend, send this link to people, whether it's a podcast or a Instagram or a whatever. You probably assume, oh, everybody listens to Matt's show. He's been around forever. Not necessarily true. New people start this thing all the time. So you sharing it might turn someone else on to it. And then you can use this code. I will flash right here. Wow. Use that code. It's good for the rest of this year. If you're watching this in a future time, it may no longer work. You may be watching this in a future time that isn't 2024. Maybe you're not even watching this on YouTube or on a television. Maybe you're watching this on a device that hasn't been invented yet. Anyway, thank you so much, Adrian. I'm going to put out a Q&A, or just go ahead and start shooting the questions to me now, and I'll keep them in a note in the Notes app. And then I'll probably put official call to action out. But thank you guys for being on this journey with me for well over 10 years now. This is my life, the wacky world of obstacle racing, even though I still cover the hybrids, covering the hybrid, which is in fact, like, come on, there is no High Rocks and Deca without the world of OCR being laid down. That's just a fact. I mean, obviously other things as well, but come on, it's like definitely on the branch off the tree. All right. I'm going to say this now sincerely. I love you. I miss you. I mean it. I have got to run.